Imagine this. A whisper travels across a muddy tavern floor in San Francisco, carried by a sailor too drunk to measure his words. He leans close to a stranger and mutters about nuggets, real nuggets, shining at the bottom of a riverbank 200 miles east. The stranger laughs, dismisses it as barroom boasting. But by morning the rumor has crawled from dockside taverns into merchant shops, from merchants to newspapers, and from newspapers to the restless ears of the world. Gold. Not coins minted by kings. Not trinkets crafted in European workshops. But raw metal ripped straight from the earth. Untouched. Waiting. In 1848, when James Marshall first spotted a glimmering flake in the waters of the American River at Sutter's Mill, he probably thought it was a curiosity, perhaps even a nuisance. But his find cracked something open inside the human imagination, something primal, something reckless. Within weeks, the world knew. Within months, the world was on the move. Picture yourself in New York, winter of 1849. Snow clogs the streets. The smell of coal smoke hangs heavy in the air. In a cramped boarding house, a young man, barely 20, reads aloud from the morning paper. His hands tremble as he shouts, "Gold discovered in California!" The room erupts. Men who've spent their lives pushing crates on the docks suddenly dream of palaces. Clerks bound to ledgers see their chains falling away. Farmers stare at their calloused palms and wonder if those same hands could sift treasure from a river. The fever spreads like fire in dry grass. Ships that once ferried cotton and tobacco now jam harbors, their sails swelling westward. The promise is intoxicating, rivers glistening with fortune, hillsides spilling wealth, whole futures rewritten with a single lucky strike. It doesn't matter that few have seen the gold themselves. The rumor is enough. Desire fills in the blanks. And so begins the exodus. Tens of thousands abandon their lives, their families, their very identities. They sell farms, desert apprenticeships, pawn wedding rings, all for a chance at California. Imagine the frenzy. Crowded auction blocks where tools and household goods go for pennies, while a single shovel, suddenly a treasure-hunting tool, sells for the price of a month's wages. Ships leaving East Coast harbors sail so crammed with men that decks sag beneath their weight. Some desert before reaching open sea, leaping to shore with nothing but dreams in their pockets. Not only Americans. News crosses oceans, igniting London, Paris, Hamburg, Canton, Sydney. Whole villages empty overnight. Cantonese peasants sell ancestral land for a one-way ticket across the Pacific. Young men in Chile and Peru abandon mines already rich in silver to gamble on California's new frontier. And Australians, not yet living in their own gold fever, watch ships vanish from Sydney Harbor, their crews replaced by men who smell fortune. The earth itself seems to tremble with migration. But fever, by its very nature, is a sickness. You picture the faces of these fortune seekers. Hollow-eyed, sleepless, some already gaunt from the journey before the real hardships even begin. They are convinced gold waits for them like fruit on a low branch. But the truth, the bitter, merciless truth, is that by the time many arrive, the rivers are already clogged with desperate men, their pans scraping the same mud, their backs bent under the same illusion. The first arrivals, yes, they found flakes. Some even found nuggets as large as fists. And their stories fed the blaze. But each tale of fortune, each triumphant return to San Francisco with pockets jingling, sent 100 more men running to the rivers. The land could not keep pace with the hunger of the world. Still, in those first months, the air itself seemed electric. San Francisco, once a sleepy village of barely 1,000 souls, swelled overnight into a roaring, chaotic city. Canvas tents sprouted where empty hills had been. Gambling halls rattled with coin and pistol fire. Prices soared. A pickaxe that cost $2 in Boston sold for $30 in California. A pan, the simplest tool of all, might fetch its weight in silver. Merchants often grew richer than miners, selling eggs, boots, even fresh water at prices that turned necessity into extortion. But no one cared. Not at first. Because everywhere, the rumor persisted. The real strike is just ahead. The big one is waiting for you. Imagine standing on the edge of a river, the Sierra Nevada rising sharp behind you, water biting cold around your ankles. You plunge your hands into the gravel, your body aching with hunger, yet every nerve alive with possibility. A single glimmer could change everything. The hunger in your stomach, the lice in your blanket, the debts you left behind, they could all vanish in the reflection of a single gold flake. That's the fever. That's the spark. But let's not lie to ourselves. For every man who stumbled back into San Francisco with a pouch of gold, 1,000 more wandered in with pockets empty, ribs showing through torn shirts, and eyes dulled by exhaustion. Some never returned at all. Their bones still lie along the trails, nameless markers of how cruel a rumor can be. And yet, even then, with graves piling along the wagon roads, the ships still came. The dream was too powerful, the rumor too sweet. To ignore it was to admit you might live and die as you were born, ordinary, poor, forgotten. Better to gamble and lose than never to gamble at all. So the spark became a blaze that consumed not only California but the souls of men across the globe. It promised riches, demanded sacrifice, and gave nothing freely. Now, let's walk with them. Let's step onto the road where the fevered masses began their journey west, chasing fortune across deserts, mountains, and oceans, toward camps that would test every limit of the human body and spirit. Because finding the gold was only the beginning. Surviving the road to it, that was the real gamble. The spark of gold fever burned fast, but a spark alone does not put gold in your hand. To chase the dream, you had to leave everything behind. Imagine it now. A farmer in Missouri stands in the doorway of his clapboard house. His wife grips his arm so tight it hurts, her eyes wet but unblinking. Behind her, children shift nervously, their faces half proud, half afraid. The man knows he may never see them again. Still, he climbs onto the wagon seat, cracks the reins, and turns west. This moment repeated itself thousands of times in 1849. Families splintered, sons vanished down dirt roads, fathers gambled their lives against the horizon. For every letter home that promised fortune, there were a dozen more that never arrived, lost to deserts, mountains, or graves dug shallow by the trail. The journey west was not a road in the modern sense. No paved highways, no gas stations, no maps with tidy lines. It was rumor stitched to rumor, a thread of wagon tracks etched across plains, deserts, and mountains. There were 3 main paths to California. One followed the Missouri River westward, then trailed across the Great Plains to the Rocky Mountains and beyond, the overland route. Another meant braving the deadly crossing of Panama, a sea voyage to Central America, a march through fever-ridden jungle, then another ship north to San Francisco. The third swung wide around the southern tip of South America, the dreaded Cape Horn Passage, 5 months at sea through storms that could swallow ships whole. Each route had its own brand of misery. The overland route promised endless walking, blistered feet, disease, and starvation. The Panama route promised yellow fever, betrayal, and bodies left unburied in swamps. Cape Horn promised madness at sea, ships rolling endlessly, men chained to the stench of salt pork and stale water, storms battering sails into ribbons. And yet, despite these choices, the men of 1849 saw only one vision, a shining pan filled with gold. The risks blurred, became background noise. Let's step onto the plains. It is spring, and the Missouri River is swollen with meltwater. Along its banks, the town of Independence boils with life. Blacksmiths hammer iron day and night, turning plowshares into pickaxes. Teamsters shout prices for oxen so high they make farmers blanch, yet still the animals sell. Sacks of flour, barrels of salt pork, rifles, shovels, tents, all vanish into wagons faster than merchants can restock them. Now close your eyes. Hear it. The groan of wagon wheels on mud. The creak of leather harness. The lowing of cattle. The babble of voices, English, German, Irish, sometimes even Cantonese, all buzzing with one word, gold. The road west is clogged with humanity. Thousands tramp beside their wagons, shoulders hunched beneath sacks of flour, faces already raw from wind. Some carry Bibles, others pistols, some both. They are poor men and rich men, educated lawyers and illiterate farmhands, sailors who've never seen a desert, farmers who've never seen the sea. All pressed together into the same desperate caravan. The first miles are easy. The land rolls gentle, the grass thick, the rivers manageable. Spirits are high. Jokes echo across campfires, fiddles scrape cheerful tunes, and men boast of how they'll return within a year, pockets bulging with gold. But each step west gnaws away at the laughter. A wagon may start heavy with supplies, but the trail strips it bare. Flour sours, meat spoils, beans spill into the mud. Oxen collapse beneath the load, their ribs showing through hide stretched thin. When animals die, wagons are abandoned. The trail west becomes a graveyard of broken wheels and splintered boards, scattered with pots, pans, and clothing cast aside in desperation. Now imagine your own hunger. You've walked 20 miles today under a sun that scorched your skin red. Your boots are stiff with dust, your tongue thick in your mouth. At camp, supper is the same as last night. Hardtack biscuits hard enough to break teeth, beans boiled until they collapse into gray paste, coffee black and bitter. You chew slowly, ignoring the weevils wriggling inside the bread. Food is not pleasure. It is fuel. And even fuel runs out. By the time the wagons reach the high plains, supplies dwindle. Some eat their shoes, boiling leather in vain hope of softening it into something chewable. Others slaughter draft animals, eating the very beasts that pull their wagons, trading tomorrow's progress for tonight's survival. The stench of death trails the caravan, oxen rotting in the sun, horses collapsing mid-stride, men too weak to rise at dawn. Then comes the desert. The 49ers who left too late in the season reached Nevada and Utah under blazing summer heat. Sand stretched endless in all directions, shimmering with mirages. Water was scarce. Streams, when found, often ran brackish with alkali, leaving lips cracked and throats swollen. Picture it. You kneel at a shallow pool, scooping water to your lips, only to gag as the taste burns your tongue. Your stomach knots. The others warn you not to drink, but thirst is stronger than wisdom. Hours later you collapse behind a boulder, belly racked with cramps, mouth foaming. By morning you are still. The caravan moves on without you. Some journals from the trail record entire families left behind in shallow graves marked with stones. Others mention wagons abandoned in rows across desert flats, their canvas tops flapping in the hot wind, silent monuments to the fever that drove men onward. If the desert doesn't claim you, the Sierra Nevada waits. By autumn, snow crowns the peaks, blocking passes. The mountains rise like a wall, black pines bristling against the sky. The air grows thin, the nights freezing. Each step upward feels heavier. Wagons shatter on rocky slopes, oxen stumble on narrow trails. Snowstorms bury camps overnight, leaving men to claw their way out with frozen hands. Some try to rush the passes too late and meet the fate of the Donner Party a few years before, trapped in snow so deep that only desperate measures kept survivors alive. Every man on the road west knew that story. Still they pressed on, convinced they would be the lucky ones. And always sickness. Cholera stalked the wagon trains like a shadow. A man might be laughing by the fire at dusk and lying cold in the dirt by dawn. The disease spread fast, leaving trails dotted with graves marked by crude wooden crosses, sometimes only initials carved in haste before the caravan pushed on. Smallpox, dysentery, scurvy, each disease found eager victims among the hungry and exhausted. Quinine, opium, and whiskey were the only medicines, and even these ran out quickly. Imagine walking past a wagon where a man lies feverish, his eyes glazed. His wife sits beside him, clutching his hand, knowing the caravan must leave in the morning. She whispers prayers, not knowing if she will bury him before sunrise. The next day, she walks on, children trailing behind her, his grave already a fading mound among thousands. Through it all, letters were written. Men hunched by flickering campfires, scratching words onto scraps of paper. I am well, do not worry, the gold is near. But the truth bled through the ink, fear, hunger, regret. Some begged their families to join them, others warned them never to follow. Most letters never reached home, lost to river crossings, stolen by thieves, or burned for kindling when the cold grew desperate. And yet, even as bodies fell and wagons shattered, the march continued. Because turning back was unthinkable. To return empty-handed meant shame, failure, perhaps ruin. Better to die on the trail than to face the neighbors back home and admit the dream had been too much. At last, those who endured reached California. But the land that awaited them was no paradise. The rivers were already crowded with men, the camps overflowing with tents and shacks. Gold was not scattered like grain waiting to be gathered. It was buried, elusive, cruel. Yet after months of hunger, thirst, and death, none cared. Simply standing on California soil felt like victory. Men stumbled into the camps with hollow cheeks and blistered hands, convinced that tomorrow, surely tomorrow, the river would reward their suffering. The road to fortune was no road at all. It was a gauntlet, a crucible. It stripped men of wealth, health, even humanity. And only then, when they were broken and desperate, did it deliver them into the frenzy of the mining camps. So let us step with them now, out of the mountains and into the valley. Ahead, the camps spread wide, canvas tents sagging in the rain, fires burning through the night, pistols cracking in the dark. This is the next chapter of the gold rush. The place where fortune and ruin lived side by side, where every sunrise carried both promise and threat. Let's walk into the camps. You've survived the road. Barely. Your boots are split at the seams, your lips cracked from thirst, your stomach a hollow drum. Behind you lie deserts littered with bones and mountains scarred with wagon ruts. Ahead, at last, the promise, the valley where gold waits in shimmering rivers. But when you crest the ridge and see the camps sprawled below, the dream stutters. It is not a land of shining fortune. It is chaos. From the hilltop, you glimpse hundreds of canvas tents, pitched in crooked rows across muddy flats. Smoke from dozens of fires twists into the sky, carrying the stench of unwashed bodies, burnt beans, and cheap whiskey. The river glints, yes, but its banks are already crowded. Men bent over pans, sleeves rolled high, faces gaunt with hunger and obsession. The clang of pickaxes echoes up the valley, a metallic heartbeat pounding day and night. You descend slowly, oxen stumbling under what remains of your supplies. The closer you get, the worse the air smells. Damp canvas, wet wool, gunpowder, horse dung, sweat thick as grease. Voices clash in a dozen languages: English, German, Spanish, Cantonese, French, all mingling into a rough chorus. Somewhere, a fiddle scrapes out a tune, its notes drowned by the crack of a pistol fired into the air for no reason but anger. This is not a town. It is a hive, buzzing, frantic, without order. Imagine walking into camp for the first time. You expect fellowship, perhaps a warm welcome from those who came before. Instead, men stare with suspicion. Every new arrival is one more rival, one more pan dipping into the same river. Some nod curtly. Others spit into the mud and turn away. The camp is a jumble of humanity. Here sits a gaunt lawyer from Boston, his coat patched with flour sacks. Next to him squats a sailor from Canton, his hands raw from scrubbing pans in icy water. A runaway slave sharpens a pick beneath a tree, while a Frenchman strums a fiddle to drown his hunger. All have come chasing the same dream, and all carry the same hollow look. a mix of hope and despair. At night, fires flicker across the valley, each circle of light a temporary world. Around one, men gamble with gold dust measured in pinches and spoonfuls. Around another, a preacher warns of damnation, his voice nearly drowned by the nearby laughter of a prostitute entertaining a crowd. Dogs snarl over scraps, while rats dart between sacks of flour. Sleep, when it comes, is restless. Look closer at the camps themselves. Most shelters are not cabins, not houses, not even proper tents. They are scraps of canvas stretched over poles, blankets hung between trees, or holes dug into hillsides and roofed with brush. When it rains, the camps become quagmires of mud, boots sucked deep, wagons sinking to their axles. When the sun beats down, canvas bakes until the air inside is suffocating. No streets. No plan. Just a sprawl of shacks and lean-tos, each thrown up in haste. Smoke stings your eyes, dust coats your tongue, and every step risks stumbling into a pit filled with garbage or worse. San Francisco may have boomed into a city overnight, but here in the hills, the camps remain feral, half civilization, half wilderness, a place where rules bent until they snapped. Food and tools are everything. And here, their price bleeds men dry. A single egg, which costs pennies in the East, sells for $1 in camp. A pickaxe, if you can find one, might cost more than a week's wages back home. Flour, beans, salt pork, each rationed carefully, each bite savored like gold itself. And when supplies run out, men eat whatever they can find. Mules, dogs, even candles made of tallow. Some trade away their last ounce of dust for a heel of bread, gambling that tomorrow's pan will repay them. Merchants grow rich while miners starve. A shrewd trader selling shovels, boots, or whiskey often pockets more gold than those who dig the riverbanks day after day. The cruel joke whispered around the fires is that the only ones guaranteed to strike it rich are the merchants. But the heart of the camp is the work. From dawn until dusk, the clang of iron fills the air. Men stand ankle-deep in icy rivers, swirling pans until their hands go numb. Others dig with pick and shovel, shoulders straining, backs bent like bows. Sweat streaks through the dust on their faces, their eyes bloodshot from squinting at gravel. The rhythm is endless: scoop, swirl, spill, search. Pan after pan, bucket after bucket, hour after hour. Each man convinced that the next swirl will glitter with fortune. More often than not, it reveals only sand. Yet they keep at it, driven by the fever that brought them here. Imagine yourself in their place. Knees trembling from cold water, arms aching from labor, hunger gnawing at your belly. Still you tell yourself, just one more pan, just one more try. And always, the threat of violence. Disputes over claims erupt daily. A man finds a promising stretch of river, stakes his ground with a shovel, and within hours another appears, insisting the land is his. Words fly, then fists, then knives, then pistols. The camps have no sheriffs, no judges, no law but the strongest hand. Gunfire is common, echoing through the valley day and night. Some shoot into the air in drunken celebration. Others aim true. A careless word, a drunken shove, a disputed card game, all can end with a body cooling in the dirt. Justice, if it comes, is swift and brutal. Mobs drag accused thieves to trees, ropes already coiled. Strangers form juries in minutes, pronounce verdicts in hours, and carry out executions before dusk. To live here is to know that death can come not from hunger or fever, but from a bullet or a rope tied by your neighbor. As the sun sets, the valley changes. Fires spark to life, casting long shadows against canvas walls. Men gather in circles, gambling with cards sticky from sweat, dice rattling across overturned barrels. Whiskey flows, cheap and harsh, burning throats but dulling despair. Laughter rises, edged with desperation, until it cracks into shouts, curses, pistol shots. In the shadows, women move between tents, some cooking, some nursing, some selling their bodies to men too lonely, too drunk, too hungry for comfort. Musicians scrape fiddles, bang drums, blow harmonicas until the noise becomes a single throbbing pulse. And yet, beneath it all, there is always the cough of sickness. Someone hacking blood into the dirt. Someone groaning from dysentery. Someone whispering prayers into the night. The camps never sleep. They only shift, from labor to violence, from hunger to fever, from hope to despair. Standing here, you understand the cruel truth. The gold rush was not a story of sudden fortune. It was a furnace. It burned men down to ash and scattered their bones across deserts, mountains, and rivers. And yet, still they came. More ships arrived in San Francisco each week. More caravans staggered in from the plains. The dream was too strong to die, even as the men chasing it did. The camps were the crucible where that dream met reality. Mud, blood, hunger, and hope all tangled together. But this is only the beginning of life in the diggings. We've arrived, yes, but survival here is its own story. Next, we step inside the shacks and tents, into the cramped shelters of the prospectors themselves, where winter bites, summer suffocates, and the human body strains against the endless struggle. Let's walk deeper into the shelters of the prospector. You walk deeper into the camps. At first glance, it looks alive, fires flickering, men bustling, tools clanging against rock. But look longer. Really look. What you see isn't a town. Its disorder stretched across the hillsides like a disease. No streets. No plan. No law. The camps are accidents of humanity, thrown down wherever boots stumbled and tents could be hammered into the ground. A patchwork of canvas flaps and timber shacks crowd each other, stitched together with mud and smoke. One tent sells whiskey, another beans, another gambling stakes. Between them run paths of churned mud ankle-deep with filth, strewn with bottles, broken boots, and bones picked clean by dogs. At dawn, men stumble out of shelters, squinting at the sun with bloodshot eyes, their clothes stiff with dirt and sweat. Some stagger straight to the river, pans clutched like holy relics. Others head to gambling tables before they even eat, their last ounces of dust traded for the thrill of one more hand. It is not civilization. It is survival dressed up as opportunity. Close your eyes and listen. The sound of camp is never still. From the river comes the endless scrape of shovels, the splash of pans dipping into icy water, the grunt of men hauling gravel. From the tents comes the rattle of dice, the thud of boots stamping on wooden floors, the screech of fiddles played by men too drunk to keep tune. And beneath it all, like a steady drumbeat, the coughs, deep, wet, rattling coughs of sickness spreading unchecked. At night, the noise changes but never stops. Gunshots crack without warning. Men brawl in the mud, fists turning quickly to knives, knives to pistols. A woman screams somewhere in the dark, her voice muffled by laughter. Dogs bark, horses rear, men shout curses in half a dozen tongues. If silence falls for even a moment, it feels unnatural, dangerous, as though something worse is about to happen. Law is a word without meaning here. In cities, men trust in courts, in sheriffs, in jails. In the camps, justice is measured by muscle and the quickness of a trigger finger. If you are cheated at cards, you may draw your pistol or you may swallow your loss. If a man steals your claim, you might shout, but shouting will not drive him away. If you're lucky, others may rally to your side. If not, your claim is gone. Some camps try to hold meetings, to establish rules, to write down who owns what. But paper burns, voices vanish, and when whiskey flows, agreements dissolve like smoke. Vigilante justice rules, mobs forming in minutes, verdicts delivered by shouts, punishments carried out before the dust settles. A thief may swing from a tree by dusk, his body left as warning, yet by morning another man will try the same crime. For gold makes men reckless. Commerce thrives amid the madness, but not with fairness. Imagine walking to a trader's tent, your boots coated in mud, hunger twisting your belly. You ask for eggs. He places 2 cracked shells on the counter and says, "That'll be $1." You swallow, knowing $1 once bought a full meal back home. But here, the merchant sets the rules, and your hunger sets the price. A shovel may cost $30, a pair of boots $50, a single onion $10. And still men pay. They must. They cannot dig without tools, cannot walk without boots, cannot live without food. Some merchants are cleverer still. They water whiskey to stretch it, grind stones into flour to make it last, or sell rusty pans with the promise that they are lucky. More than one miner spends his last coin on whiskey, hoping the drink will dull the hunger gnawing at his gut. And all the while, merchants grow fat as miners grow gaunt. Where disorder reigns, filth follows. There are no sewers, no drains, no clean wells. Waste runs straight into the streams where men scoop water for cooking. Dead animals rot where they fall, their hides splitting under the sun. Flies swarm over everything, food wounds faces. The stench of dung, sweat, and decay never lifts. Sickness thrives here. Dysentery sweeps through tents like fire through dry grass. Men collapse in the mud, groaning, their bodies racked with fever. Malaria stalks the camps, its victims shivering beneath blankets even as the sun beats down. Scurvy rots gums until teeth loosen and fall. There are no doctors, not really. A few men claim the title, armed with bottles of laudanum or mercury pills, but their cures often kill faster than the sickness. For most, the only medicine is whiskey, prayer, or luck. The gold rush drew the world, and in the camps you hear it, languages crashing together in confusion. Irish immigrants curse in Gaelic. Germans sing drunken ballads. Chileans barter in Spanish, while Chinese miners speak Cantonese in soft, measured tones. The babble of voices makes every bargain suspect, every shout a potential threat. Prejudice festers here. Foreigners are often pushed aside, their claims stolen under the pretense of American rights. Chinese miners are forced to work the scraps of river already abandoned, yet sometimes, through patience and skill, they find more than their oppressors. Resentment follows, and fights erupt, sometimes small, sometimes ending with blood in the mud. But hunger has no nationality. At night, men of every language sit by the same fires, chewing the same beans, coughing the same coughs. And through it all, the dream persists. Every man clings to the illusion that fortune lies just one pan away. Even as the camps rot, even as men starve and fight and die, hope keeps them working. You see it in their eyes, the glimmer, the fever. A man who found nothing yesterday believes today will be different. A man who has lost everything believes tomorrow will restore him. Disorder does not kill the dream. It feeds it. For in the chaos, gold seems always possible, always just out of reach, hidden in the next swirl of sand. You stand in the midst of this camp, mud sucking at your boots, smoke stinging your eyes, the air thick with shouts and stench, and realize, this is not the shining frontier promised in newspapers. This is a crucible where men are melted down, stripped of their manners, their laws, even their humanity. And yet they stay. Because leaving means failure. Leaving means admitting the fever lied. And so the chaos continues, day after day, night after night, until the camps themselves seem to breathe with madness. But we are not done. We've seen the camp from the outside, seen its disorder and lawlessness. Now let's step inside the shelters themselves. Canvas, mud, wood, and stone. Let's see how these prospectors lived, or tried to, when winter froze their bones and summer baked them alive. Let's step into the shelter of the prospector. You leave the chaos of the camp's muddy paths, step past the gambling tents and whiskey dens, and approach the shelters, the places where men try, against all odds, to carve out something resembling home. If the camp itself is chaos, the shelters are desperation made visible. The most common sight is the tent, 4 poles jammed into the earth, a canvas sheet stretched across them, corners tied with ropes scavenged from wagons. Some men have only blankets draped between sticks, their walls flapping in the night wind. Inside, the ground is bare dirt, trampled flat by boots, sometimes softened with straw if any can be found. Rain turns it to mud, cold seeps up from it at night, and insects crawl through it without resistance. Imagine lying down after 12 hours of digging in a frozen river. You collapse onto that hard ground, your blanket damp from last night's rain, your clothes stiff with sweat and dust. The canvas above rattles in the wind, droplets sneaking through worn seams. Rats scuttle near your head. Sleep comes only when exhaustion wins the fight against discomfort. Others, unwilling to trust canvas against the elements, dig into the hillsides. They carve shallow caves, lining walls with brush, roofing them with timber dragged from nearby forests. These dugouts are damp, always damp, smelling of earth and rot. But they block the wind, and in the coldest months, that makes the difference between misery and death. Some build shanties, rough cabins from logs, driftwood, even crates stolen from supply wagons. Gaps in the walls are stuffed with rags, moss, or mud. Roofs sag beneath rain, floors remain nothing but dirt, but at least there is space to stand upright. Yet for all the effort, these shelters remain fragile things. A fire lit inside fills the air with choking smoke. A storm outside leaks through every crack. And when disease creeps in, there is no escaping it. Sick men coughing inches from the healthy, all trapped in the same cramped space. Winter is the true enemy of the prospector's shelter. When the Sierra Nevada winds cut down through the valleys, no canvas or log wall is enough. Cold seeps through blankets, gnaws at bones, stiffens fingers until even striking a match feels impossible. Men huddle together, sharing body heat, wrapping themselves in every scrap of cloth they own. Some even sleep beside their mules, their breath mingling in frozen clouds. Inside the tent or shanty, every surface grows stiff with frost. Canvas stiffens like boards. Water basins freeze solid. In the mornings, men wake to find their blankets stiff with ice, their beards coated white. Some never wake at all. Imagine rolling from sleep to discover your companion beside you, still as stone, his face pale in the dim light. He has frozen in the night. And still, outside, men's pans clang against the river. Work does not stop. Then comes the other cruelty, summer. Canvas traps heat like an oven. Dugouts stink of sweat and rot. The sun blazes off river rocks until the very air shimmers. Inside a prospector's shelter, flies swarm thick, buzzing around unwashed bodies. The stench of sweat, smoke, and decay hangs heavy. Men strip to their undershirts, but even then, sleep is restless. Bodies stick to blankets damp with sweat. Mosquitoes whine through the night. And still, the fever for gold drives them to rise before dawn, stumbling into the blazing sun with picks slung over shoulders. What passes for a bed in these shelters is misery in itself. Most sleep on the ground, perhaps with a sack of straw, perhaps with nothing. The lucky few elevate planks across stones to keep off the damp earth. Some use piles of pine boughs, sharp needles pricking through cloth. Blankets are precious, often shared by several men. Wool grows stiff with dirt and lice. Washing is rare, water is for drinking, not for scrubbing. The smell of those blankets is indescribable, sweat soaked in, smoke infused, mildew creeping at the edges. Lice and fleas thrive. A man might scratch until his skin bleeds, yet still wake crawling with them. At night, the rustle of vermin is constant. Rats gnaw at boots, nibble on crumbs, sometimes chew on fingers if the sleeper is too still. And yet, after 12 hours of backbreaking labor, men collapse into this misery and call it rest. The sound inside a prospector's shelter is different from the camp outside. Quieter, but no less telling. You hear the rasp of coughing, the wheeze of exhausted lungs, the groan of men shifting sore muscles, sometimes muttered prayers. sometimes curses whispered into the dark. And beneath it all, the constant scratching, fingers against skin, chasing lice that never truly go away. A fire inside is dangerous but necessary. In winter, men risk smoke and flame to chase off frost. They huddle around tiny stoves made from old barrels, feeding them scraps of wood or even dried dung. The smoke clings to canvas, blackening it, choking lungs. Yet without it, the cold would kill faster. Some shelters reek of scorched cloth where flames lick too high. Others bear scars of tragedy, ashes where once a tent stood, now nothing but charred earth. But worse than the cold, worse than the heat, worse even than the lice and the filth, is the loneliness. Inside these shelters, men lie awake, staring into the dark, listening to the wind rattle canvas. They think of families left behind, of wives they may never see again, of children growing up without them. Letters are rare, months apart, sometimes lost entirely. Some talk in their sleep, calling out names of loved ones. Others mutter promises. One more strike, one more nugget, then I'll go home. But the strikes rarely come, and the shelter remains, season after season. Loneliness drives some to madness, others to drink, others to violence. The walls of canvas and wood do not protect against that kind of hunger. Standing in one of these shelters, you understand, the prospector's home was not a refuge. It was another battlefield. Against cold, against heat, against vermin and hunger and loneliness. And yet, these shelters mattered. They kept men alive barely. They gave them a place to collapse, to scratch their sores, to dream of fortunes still to come. They were fragile fortresses against a world that wanted to crush them. Now step back outside. The camp is still roaring, dice rattling, pickaxes clanging, gunshots cracking. But you've seen what lies behind the canvas flaps and shanty walls. And you know that survival here is not just about digging gold. It is about enduring every night, every storm, every morning when the cold bites your bones and you rise anyway. Next, let's open the prospector's kettle and look inside. Let's see what they ate, how they fueled their bodies for this endless labor. Spoiled beans, rancid bacon, hard bread, bitter coffee. The meager diet of those who gambled everything on gold. You leave the shanty's shadow and follow the smell of smoke. It is not the rich aroma of roasted meat or the sweet perfume of bread. It is acrid, greasy, thin, smoke from damp wood, fat dripping into flames, beans boiling until they collapse into gray mush. This is the kitchen of the gold rush, a blackened kettle balanced on stones, a skillet beaten and bent, a tin cup dented from travel. Here, men tried to eat enough to face another day of backbreaking labor. The diet of the prospector is simple, monotonous, and merciless. That is nearly all. Every campfire crackles with them, every stomach groans under them. Beans are boiled until they dissolve, forming a paste that coats tongues and teeth. Bacon, salted to survive the journey west, is so greasy that it leaves pans slick and fingers shiny. Bread is not soft loaves but hard biscuits of flour and water, hardtack so tough you need to soak it in coffee before your teeth can manage it. And coffee, the coffee. Black as ink, bitter as ash, sometimes laced with grounds gritty between the teeth. It is boiled until nearly poisonous, served in tin cups that burn your lips. Yet men cling to it, for its heat and bitterness jolt them awake, trick their bodies into thinking they have strength left. Day after day, meal after meal, these four companions return, until men curse them even as they eat them. Food is not only meager, it is expensive. Supplies hauled from San Francisco or Sacramento arrive on mule trains, their cost multiplied tenfold by the journey. A sack of flour that costs a few dollars back east may fetch 50 here. Eggs sell for $1 apiece, onions for their weight in gold. Fresh vegetables are rarities, treasures more precious than a nugget in the pan. Imagine trading a handful of gold dust, earned through hours of icy labor, for a single wilted cabbage. And still, men do it, for without vegetables, scurvy waits with its swollen gums and loose teeth. merchants grow fat while miners grow thin. The cruel joke of the camps is that the surest fortune lies not in panning but in selling food to those who pan. Even these costly supplies often betray their buyers. Flour arrives infested with weevils. Salt pork rots in barrels, the fat rancid, the meat crawling with maggots. Beans sprout mold, coffee grows damp and clumpy. Men scrape the rot away, stir it into their kettles, and swallow it anyway. Hunger does not allow pride. Some chew leather when food runs out, boiling belts and boots in vain hope of softening them. Others eat candles made of tallow, the wax greasy and foul, yet still better than an empty stomach. Picture a camp at dusk. A circle of men squat around a smoky fire, their faces hollow in the glow. A kettle hangs over the flames, beans bubbling, bacon sizzling in a blackened skillet. The smell is sharp, greasy, filling the air with smoke that clings to clothes and hair. Tin plates clatter. Beans are ladled, bacon slapped onto bread, coffee poured thick. Men eat in silence, each mouthful more necessity than pleasure. The grease coats their throats, the coffee scalds their tongues, but no one complains. Complaints do not fill bellies. Afterward, plates are wiped with bread crusts, cups rinsed with river water, and all is ready to repeat tomorrow. What is missing from this diet is as important as what is present. No milk, no fruit, no greens. No variety, no flavor. Salt and grease dominate. The human body, built for balance, slowly rebels. Teeth ache, gums swell, bellies not. Men grow weak not from lack of gold but from lack of nourishment. Scurvy spreads. A man's gums bleed as he chews, his teeth loosen, his skin bruises at the slightest touch. Dysentery thrives in the polluted water used to cook beans and brew coffee. Hunger gnaws even when the belly is technically full, for it is not enough to be filled, one must be fed. And yet small luxuries sometimes appear, and when they do, they are celebrated like treasure. A miner receives a letter from home, and with it, a tin of dried apples. Another shares a jar of molasses, its sweetness a shock after weeks of grease and salt. A lucky man stumbles upon wild berries near camp, their tartness reminding him that the world still holds flavor. Whiskey, too, is a luxury, though a dangerous one. Sold at ruinous prices, it burns away cold and misery for a brief hour, then leaves thirst sharper than before. Still, men drink, clinging to its warmth in a world of hunger. Stories drift through the camps of great feasts. Tables loaded with roast beef, fresh bread, pies steaming with apples. These tales are half memory, half fantasy. Around campfires, men close their eyes and describe their mothers' kitchens, their wives' stews, the Sunday roasts of their childhoods. One man remembers a loaf of bread so soft he could press his finger into it and leave a print. Another recalls butter melting on hot potatoes. Another swears he can still smell cinnamon on a pie his sister once baked. The hunger is not only of the belly but of the memory. Food becomes not just fuel but a dream of home, a reminder of all that was left behind for the promise of gold. So you stand by the campfire, beans bubbling, bacon spitting, coffee hissing in tin cups, and you understand, this is not the feast of legend. This is survival measured in beans and bread, in bacon grease and bitter coffee. The prospector's body is a machine, burning itself down day by day, fueled by rations that barely keep it alive. And yet, he rises each dawn, takes his pan, and returns to the river. For the dream of gold is stronger than hunger, stronger even than the body's protests. But the diet, meager as it is, carries consequences beyond hunger. For when men drink from the same polluted streams they dig, when filth and waste seep into their kettles, sickness follows. Dysentery, cholera, fevers, diseases fed by dirty water and fouled camps. So let us leave the campfire now, walk to the river, and see what men drink, what filth they live in, and what sickness spreads in their midst. Let us wade into water and filth. The river is never far. It is the heart of the camp, the reason men are here. It gleams with the promise of gold, But it carries something else too, filth. At dawn, men stagger down its banks with pans in hand. The water is icy, numbing fingers to the bone. They scoop gravel, swirl it, search for that telltale glimmer. Every splash is hope, every swirl a gamble. The river is their fortune. And yet, when thirst strikes, when bellies demand coffee or kettles need filling, it is the same river they turn to. The same water that carries dirt, sweat, blood, and worse. Imagine kneeling at the bank, cupping cold water to your lips. It tastes of mud, metallic, bitter. You know what else floats downstream: slaughtered animals, human waste, refuse from 100 tents. But you drink anyway. You must. There are no wells in the camps, no aqueducts, no pumps. Only streams and rivers, already fouled by the work of hundreds of men. Waste seeps into them, piles of garbage, scraps of spoiled food, even bodies of dead animals left to bloat in the current. Some men wash their clothes where others fetch their cooking water. Some rinse pans beside men relieving themselves. The line between fresh and foul does not exist. And so disease spreads like wildfire. Dysentery is the most common curse. It begins with cramps, then relentless diarrhea. A man grows weaker each hour, his body emptying faster than he can drink. He lies curled in the dirt outside his tent, groaning, too weak to rise. His companions curse him, for his sickness fouls the air, but they do not help. They cannot. They are too afraid of catching it themselves. Sometimes he lingers for days, his lips cracked, his eyes sunken. Other times he is gone by morning. His body is carried to the edge of camp, buried shallow, forgotten within a week. The river flows on, carrying the same sickness to the next camp downstream. Worse still is cholera. It strikes like lightning. A man may be laughing by the fire at dusk and stiff in the dirt by dawn. Vomiting, cramps, diarrhea so violent that his body dries to a husk in hours. When cholera sweeps through a camp, fear is palpable. Men whisper that the river is cursed, that demons dwell in it. But still, they drink. There is no choice. Graves multiply. Wooden markers lean in rows, scratched with names or only initials. Sometimes no marker at all, just a mound of earth, quickly forgotten. The camps themselves reek. Without drains or privies, men relieve themselves wherever they can, behind tents, beside paths, sometimes directly into the river. Garbage piles rot in the sun, flies swarm thick, rats scurry bold as dogs. The stench hangs over everything. It clings to clothes, to blankets, to the very air. Newcomers gag when they arrive, but within days, they no longer notice. The body learns to ignore what it cannot escape. Some men try to fight it. They boil their water, though fuel is scarce. They dig shallow pits for waste, though few bother to cover them. They bathe in the river when heat grows unbearable, scrubbing their bodies raw with sand. But bathing upstream only means fouling the water for those downstream. And so the cycle continues, filth feeding sickness, sickness feeding graves. Soap is rare, precious. When found, it is traded like gold. A bar might last a month, shaved into slivers, jealously guarded. More often, men simply scrub with cold water and hope. The filth breeds vermin in endless numbers. Fleas and lice infest blankets, biting until skin is raw. Men scratch until they bleed, yet never rid themselves of the crawling itch. Rats dart through tents, gnawing food sacks, chewing boots, sometimes biting sleepers. Some prospectors set traps, others keep dogs. But there are always more rats, drawn by the smell of garbage, the scraps of bacon, the unburied dead. The camps hum with life, but it is a life of vermin as much as men. Living in this filth wears on the mind as much as the body. Imagine waking each day to the stench of waste, the buzzing of flies, the sight of men squatting in the open, of garbage heaps crawling with maggots. Imagine drinking water that you know may sicken you, eating food swarmed by flies, lying down at night to feel lice crawling on your skin. The dream of gold dims in such conditions, yet still it burns. For what else can justify this life, if not the chance, however slim, of fortune? The lack of women worsens the filth. Camps of men alone grow careless, indifferent. Dishes are rarely washed, clothes never scrubbed. Blankets rot, boots stiffen with sweat. When a woman does appear, rarely, her presence alone often sparks a sudden frenzy of cleaning, as if the shame of filth can be washed away in a single day. But when she leaves, the camps slide back into squalor. And yet, look beyond the camps. The rivers sparkle in the sun. Pines stretch tall and green, their needles whispering in the wind. Mountains rise sharp against the horizon, their peaks gleaming with snow. The land is beautiful. It is man who fouls it. The camps sit like open wounds upon the valley floor, seeping filth into streams that once ran pure. Nature endures, but beneath its beauty lies the human stain. So you stand at the river bank, tin cup in hand. The water glitters, promising fortune. Yet in its depths, sickness waits. You drink because you must, and each swallow is a gamble. The camps are not undone by hunger alone, nor by cold, nor even by violence. They are undone by filth, by the simple failure to keep clean in a place too crowded, too desperate, too lawless. And still, tomorrow, men will rise before dawn, splash into the same water, and bend their backs again. For the gold glimmers, and the fever blinds them to the filth that festers all around. Now step away from the river. Look back at the camp, where pans clang and pickaxes ring. The day stretches long ahead, every hour filled with labor. Let us walk into that endless day, where miners toil from dawn to dusk, chasing dreams with blistered hands and broken backs. The camp stirs before the first light. A cough in the dark. The rattle of a pan. The crack of boots against stiff leather. Men groan awake, their bodies heavy, their minds fogged, but the fever drives them up. There is no rooster here, no church bell, no factory whistle. The day begins with hunger, with habit, with the whisper of gold in the river. Imagine standing in the half-light of morning. The air is cold, dew clings to the grass, and mist coils off the river. Men shuffle from their shelters, shoulders hunched, blankets draped like cloaks. Fires spark to life, kettles boil with coffee so bitter it could strip paint. They eat quickly, beans left from the night before, bacon reheated until hard, bread dipped in coffee to soften its stone-hard crust. No time for talk, no time for leisure. The sun is rising, and the river waits. Pans, shovels, and picks clatter against each other as men head to the banks. Their steps are uneven, their faces pale, but their hands already twitch for the work. Some carry wheelbarrows, others buckets, some drag sledges piled with tools. The sound of metal striking stone begins even before the sun clears the hills. And once it begins, it does not stop. Picture a man knee-deep in icy water. His boots fill, his toes go numb, but he does not leave. He scoops gravel into his pan, dips it, swirls it, tips the water out, swirls again. Always the same motion: scoop, swirl, spill, search. His arms ache, his back bends, but he keeps going. Beside him, another swings a pick against rock. Each blow shudders through his arms, rattling his teeth. The sound echoes across the valley, clang, 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 until it becomes the heartbeat of the camp. Buckets fill, pans empty, gravel piles grow, dust drifts in the air. Men cough, wipe sweat with filthy sleeves, spit into the dirt. And still they work, hour after hour, chasing that elusive glimmer. The endless day leaves its mark. Hands blister until skin peels. Nails split, knuckles crack, fingers swell. Backs bow, shoulders knot, knees throb. Sun beats down, burning skin raw. Cold water stiffens limbs until joints ache with every movement. Some collapse by midday, their bodies simply refusing to rise again. Others push on, driven by the sight of a neighbor's pan glittering with dust. Hunger gnaws, thirst burns, but work continues. For every moment not spent digging feels like opportunity lost. What strikes you most is the silence. Not true silence. The clang of tools, the splash of water, the muttered curses never stop. But silence of conversation. Men do not speak as they work. They do not laugh, do not sing. Their eyes are fixed, their hands move in rhythm, their minds consumed. Each is alone, even in the crowd. Gold fever isolates. It makes companions into rivals, neighbors into competitors. By noon, the sun is high, the heat heavy. Some pause to chew cold beans from their tin plates, others gnaw strips of bacon gone rancid. Water is gulped warm from canteens, coffee swallowed even in the heat. Rest lasts minutes. Then the tools rise again. The river sparkles with men, hundreds bending, digging, washing, always searching. Hills echo with picks, valleys fill with shouts when claims are disputed, with curses when pans come up empty. And still, hour after hour, the work grinds on. Once in a while, a cry breaks the monotony. A man straightens, his eyes wide, his pen gleaming. A nugget, a handful of dust, a glimpse of fortune. Others crowd close, staring, jealousy flaring. For a moment, hope surges through the camp. If he can find it, so can they. Then the fever burns hotter. Picks swing harder, pans swirl faster. The endless day deepens. Shadows lengthen. Backs ache. Muscles tremble. Still, the work does not stop. Some men labor until darkness swallows the river, their hands raw, their clothes stiff with mud. They work by lantern light, eyes straining, their bodies screaming for rest. But gold fever whispers, "One more pan. One more strike. Just one more." When at last the day ends, it is not by choice but by exhaustion. Men stagger from the river, shoulders slumped, boots dragging. They collapse by their fires, shovels dropped, pans discarded. Supper is beans again, bacon again, coffee again. Conversation is sparse, eyes already half shut. Some gamble their last dust at tables, others slump against logs with whiskey bottles, some simply fall into their shelters and sleep where they drop. The camp quiets, though not completely. Gunshots still echo, dice still rattle, coughs still hack through the night. But the diggings themselves fall silent, the river left alone until dawn. This is the endless day of the prospector. Dawn to dusk, body against earth, hope against despair. Work that grinds flesh and bone into dust, that consumes mind and spirit. Work without pause, without comfort, without certainty. And yet, each morning they rise again. Each morning they return to the river. For the fever does not sleep, and the dream of gold cannot be quenched. But the endless day carries a price. Blisters harden into scars, backs curve, eyes dull. Exhaustion gnaws until sleep itself becomes torment, restless, broken, haunted. So let us step inside again, into the night, and feel that exhaustion creep into every limb, every dream, every restless hour. Let us face the weight of exhaustion and pain. The work ends when the body gives out. Not when the sun sets, not when the pans are empty, not when hunger gnaws. It ends when muscle refuses to lift the pick, when fingers can no longer close around the shovel's handle, when knees buckle in the river's current. And then, exhaustion takes its toll. Imagine your own hands after a single day at the diggings. Blisters bloom, then tear. Skin peels back, raw and bleeding, dirt ground into every wound. Nails split. Fingers swell until even holding a tin cup makes you wince. Now stretch that across weeks. Calluses harden into stone, but beneath them nerves still throb. Wrists ache, shoulders knot, the spine curves from hours bent over pans. Feet crack inside damp boots, toes raw, ankles swollen. At night, muscles spasm. Legs twitch, arms cramp. The body refuses to be still. Sleep becomes a battlefield, every position painful, every shift a jolt. The river water is merciless. It bites from dawn to dusk, numbing toes, stiffening joints, crawling up legs into bones. Men step out at night shivering uncontrollably, their clothes stiff with ice, their skin red and cracked. Hypothermia creeps silently. A man who laughs at the cold in the morning may grow slow and confused by evening, his speech slurred, his steps clumsy. Companions drag him to the fire, but sometimes he does not rise again. The river takes him as surely as a bullet. And when summer comes, another torment waits. The sun blazes down, baking the earth until it cracks. Sweat runs into eyes, salt stinging. Shirts cling, soak through, then dry stiff with dust. Lips split, tongues swell. Men faint in the heat, their bodies collapsing in the dust. Some wake hours later, dizzy and weak. Others never wake. The endless day does not spare the careless. Exhaustion is sharpened by hunger. The diet of beans and bacon fills the belly but never nourishes. Muscles crave strength they cannot find. Gums swell with scurvy, teeth loosen, stomachs cramp. Men stagger at their work, their bodies skeletal, their eyes hollow. Yet still they swing the pick, still they swirl the pan. For hunger may kill, but abandoning the dream kills faster. And then comes the night. You would think exhaustion would bring deep sleep. But it does not. A prospector lies on his straw sack, his body writhing with aches. Every joint throbs. His back sears. His hands twitch involuntarily, curling into fists. He tosses and turns, searching for comfort that does not exist. The shelter offers no peace. Lice bite, fleas crawl, rats scuttle. Companions cough beside him, their groans breaking the silence. The canvas rattles in the wind, the fire smolders, smoke stings his eyes. Sleep, when it comes, is shallow. Dreams are fevered, full of rivers that yield nothing, of gold that crumbles to dust in his hands. He wakes often, drenched in sweat, or chilled to the bone. Morning brings no rest, only another day of labor. The work leaves more than blisters and cramps. Picks glance off stone into flesh. Shovels slip, breaking toes. Falling rocks crush legs. A single accident can end a prospector's dream forever. There are no doctors, no hospitals. Wounds are bound with dirty rags, splints fashioned from branches, pain dulled with whiskey. Infection follows swiftly. Cuts swell, redden, ooze. Fever rises. A man who injures himself today may be buried by week's end. The camps are littered with men limping on crutches, their hands wrapped in filthy bandages, their eyes glazed with pain. They are reminders that the gold is not the only thing waiting in the river. Exhaustion eats at more than the body. It gnaws at the mind. Imagine waking each morning already tired, your body aching before the first shovel is lifted. Imagine knowing that today will be just as hard as yesterday, and tomorrow harder still. Hope dims. Patience frays. Men snap at each other over trifles, fists flying, knives flashing. Some retreat into silence, staring into the fire with empty eyes. Others drink until their bodies collapse. Others wander off alone and never return, their minds broken by the grind. The fever for gold is strong, but exhaustion is stronger. It hollows men out, leaves them shells of themselves, still moving, still digging, but already half dead. Stand now in the camp at night. Look around. You see men slumped against logs, too weary to move. Others lie in shelters, groaning in their sleep. Some cough blood into the dirt, others scratch at sores that never heal. Their bodies are machines breaking down, their minds shadows of what they once were. And still, at dawn, they will rise again. For the fever does not care for exhaustion, does not pity pain. The dream drives them forward, even as their bodies collapse beneath them. But exhaustion is not the only shadow in the camp. The lure of gold draws not just the desperate but the ruthless, the thieves, the gamblers, the killers. Pain may weaken the body, but crime threatens the soul. So let us step into the darker corners of the camp, where knives glint in the firelight, pistols bark in the night, and men kill for a pouch of dust. Let us walk into the shadow of crime. Night falls over the camp, and the river quiets. The clang of pickaxes fades, the pans lie abandoned, the fires burn low. But rest does not come easily here. For in the dark, another world wakes, a world where fortune changes hands not by shovels and pans, but by fists, pistols, and blades. Gold is a magnet, not only for honest men who labor in the rivers, but for thieves who wait in the shadows. A pouch of dust is easier stolen than earned. Every miner knows this. He feels it when he walks back to camp with his day's findings, the small pouch heavy at his belt. He feels eyes on him, neighbors watching, strangers loitering. He knows that in this lawless place, one step too far from the fire's glow might be his last. And still, he clutches the pouch. Because to leave it unguarded is worse. Much of the crime begins at the gambling tables. Step into a tent lit by lanterns, smoke curling thick in the air. Dice rattle, cards slap, coins clink. Men lean over rough boards, their faces tense, their hands restless. Whiskey flows, tempers rise. One man throws down his cards, convinced he's been cheated. Another laughs too loud. A hand goes to a belt, a pistol flashes. The tent erupts. Chairs topple, bottles shatter, fists fly. Shots ring out. By the time silence returns, a body lies cooling in the dirt, and the gambler's gold has changed hands. Such scenes are nightly, ordinary, expected. In the camps, gambling is less about luck than about who is fastest to draw when luck runs out. Others do not bother with dice or cards. They wait for the weary miner stumbling back from the river, or the drunkard weaving away from the saloon. A shadow in the brush, a strike from behind, a pouch ripped free. Sometimes the victim wakes later, bruised and broken. Sometimes he does not wake at all. Tents are slit open at night, pouches snatched from beneath sleeping heads. Even boots are stolen, leaving men barefoot in the mud. A prospector may rise at dawn to find everything gone, tools, food, even his shelter stripped away in the dark. And beyond the camps, the roads are worse. The trails to and from San Francisco swarm with bandits. They strike wagon trains, hold pistols to travelers' heads, and demand gold dust and supplies. Some dress as fellow miners, earning trust before turning on their companions. Others roam in packs, armed and ruthless, leaving bodies in ditches. Merchants, who grow rich selling goods, are favorite targets. Stagecoaches heavy with supplies are ambushed. Drivers are shot, passengers stripped. The roads are as dangerous as the rivers, and every mile is a gamble with life. But the most common violence comes from disputes over claims. Picture two men working the same stretch of riverbank. One insists he was there first, the other swears the land is his. Voices rise, shovels lift, fists swing. A knife flashes, a pistol cracks. Within minutes, one man lies bleeding, the other stands panting, his claim secured by death. Witnesses shrug. In a world where law is absent, the stronger man wins. Tomorrow, someone else may challenge him, and the cycle repeats. Crime is not only theft and murder. There are cheats who weigh gold dust with rigged scales, merchants who sell rotten meat at fresh prices, barkeepers who water whiskey until it tastes of river mud. Confidence men run scams, selling secret maps to rich veins of gold, pawning off worthless land deeds, even painting lead nuggets with guilt to trick the desperate. Many fall victim, too tired, too hopeful, too blinded by gold fever to question. The camps swarm with these shadows, for where there is desperation, there is profit. And yet, for every thief, there is a mob waiting to hunt him down. Crime here is bold, but justice is quick, brutal, and uncertain. A man accused, guilty or not, may find himself dragged from his tent, tied to a tree, and left swinging by dawn. This fear drives crime further into the shadows. Men kill not only to steal, but to silence witnesses. Better a corpse than an accuser. Better a shallow grave than a mob with ropes and torches. All this breeds suspicion. Neighbors watch each other with wary eyes. Friends drink together at night but keep hands close to their belts. Trust is rare, fragile, and often broken. Men bury their gold in secret, hide their tools, sleep with pistols under their blankets. The camp is not a community but a cluster of rivals, each man measuring the others, each fearing betrayal. So you stand in the dark of the camp, the firelight flickering across faces hard with suspicion. You hear the rattle of dice, the crack of pistols, the whisper of footsteps in the brush. You smell the smoke, the whiskey, the sharp tang of fear. This is not the dream the newspapers promised. This is not the shining frontier. This is the shadow of crime, stretched long and deep across the gold fields. And yet, even here, men cling to the illusion of justice, if not from law, then from themselves. They gather into mobs, they form miners' courts, they take the law into their own hands. So let us step into the next chapter, frontier justice, a justice as rough and ruthless as the land itself. The camps are restless at night. A pistol cracks, a man screams, a pouch of dust vanishes. And by dawn, the camp gathers, faces grim, eyes watchful. For where crime festers, justice must follow. And in the goldfields, justice wears no robe, carries no gavel, and answers to no court. It wears boots, carries rifles, and answers to the mob. At first light, a crowd forms. A man is accused, a thief, a cheat, a murderer. He is dragged before the gathering, his arms tied, his face bloody from last night's capture. There is no judge, no jury box, no lawyer. The court is the camp itself, hundreds of miners standing in a ragged circle, rifles slung over shoulders, shovels in hand. A spokesman steps forward, perhaps a merchant, perhaps a preacher, perhaps just the loudest man present. He calls for order, his voice carrying across the crowd. Witnesses are shouted forward, their words tumbling over each other, accusations mixed with curses. The accused shouts back, pleading, denying, or sometimes confessing outright. The court listens, murmurs, argues. The crowd sways with its own mood, shifting like a tide. Guilt or innocence is not measured by evidence but by the weight of opinion, by who shouts loudest, by what the mob hungers for. And when the verdict comes, it comes swiftly. Sometimes the accused is whipped, lashed raw before the camp, his cries drowned by jeers. Sometimes he is banished, driven out into the wilderness with nothing but the clothes on his back, a sentence as good as death. But often, the punishment is harsher still. A rope is thrown over a branch, a knot tied quick and tight. The accused is dragged beneath it, prayers shouted, curses hurled. His last words are cut short by the tightening noose. His body jerks, twitches, then hangs limp. The crowd watches in silence, then disperses. Justice, swift and merciless, is done. By morning, the corpse may still dangle, a warning to all who pass. Theft will not be tolerated, murder will be repaid in kind. Executions in the camps are not hidden, they are spectacles. Children climb on barrels to see. Men jostle for the front. Some watch with grim satisfaction, others with unease, others with excitement. Whiskey flows freely afterward, songs rise, stories spread. The hangman becomes legend before the night is through. Fear sharpens the memory. Men walk away convinced they will never steal, never cheat, never cross the camp's unwritten laws. At least not where they can be caught. But justice is not always orderly. Sometimes there is no miner's court, no gathering at dawn. Sometimes a mob forms in the heat of anger, fist closing on a man before he can speak. A rope is found, a tree chosen, and within minutes he swings. In the frenzy, guilt hardly matters. A thief may hang for stealing an ounce of gold. A drunk may hang for an insult, A foreigner may hang simply because suspicion fell on him. The mob is a beast with many voices and no mercy. Still, the camps tried to write rules. Some drafted mining codes, scribbled on scraps of paper, declaring how claims should be staked, how disputes should be settled. They set limits, 30 feet of river bank per man, 40 acres of hillside. They outlawed claim jumping, promised fairness. But rules written on paper mean little when pistols speak louder. The codes were guidelines at best, trampled whenever anger or greed demanded. In some camps, men elected sheriffs. A badge hammered from tin, a pistol at the hip, a promise to keep order. But sheriffs had little power without the crowd behind them. A man might be respected for a week, feared for a month, but once his back was turned, crime thrived as before. Some sheriffs turned to corruption, taking bribes to ignore theft, siding with the strong against the weak. Others tried to enforce order and ended with bullets in their chests. Few wore the badge for long. Frontier justice did not stop at theft or murder. It reached into disputes between nations, between cultures. Chinese miners, Mexican miners, Chilean miners, many were driven from rich claims, their rights ignored, their lives endangered. Accused of theft without proof, they were whipped, banished, sometimes killed. For justice in the camps was not blind. It saw race, it saw origin, it saw strength. And it punished the weak more often than the guilty. Every miner knew, today's jury could be tomorrow's mob. A careless word, a false accusation, a neighbor's envy, any could end in a rope around the neck. This fear kept some men honest, or at least cautious. They hid their gold, avoided disputes, kept their heads down. But fear also bred paranoia. Neighbors spied on neighbors, friends grew suspicious, trust crumbled. In the goldfields, justice did not build community. It tore it apart, keeping men bound not by loyalty but by fear of punishment. Stand now in the circle of a miner's court. Feel the press of bodies around you, the heat of anger, the stench of sweat and whiskey. Hear the shouts, the curses, the verdict handed down not by law but by mob. Watch the rope tighten, the body jerk, the silence that follows. This is frontier justice, swift, brutal, final. It brings order of a kind, but not peace. It punishes crime, but it also feeds fear. It is the law of survival, the law of desperation, the law of gold. And yet, even frontier justice cannot hang disease. It cannot whip away fever, cannot banish hunger, cannot shoot the invisible killers that stalk the camps. For death comes not only by rope or bullet, but by sickness carried in water, in food, in air. So let us walk now into the shadow of plague and pestilence, into the epidemics that swept the camps, leaving graves faster than gold could be found. The camps reek of smoke, sweat, and filth. Gold glimmers faintly in pans, but death glimmers brighter in the eyes of the sick. For while bullets and knives kill quickly, sickness kills slowly, spreading silent, invisible, unstoppable. And in the goldfields, disease is everywhere. It begins with a cough. A man hunched over the fire hacks into his sleeve, shrugs it off, returns to his beans. By morning, 2 others cough the same way. By week's end, the sound echoes across camp like a drumbeat. Then the fever comes. The shakes. The shivering sweats. The rasp of lungs filling with fluid. And before the month is out, the graveyard has grown. The camps are crowded, filthy, restless. Perfect breeding grounds for sickness. Once a disease enters, it spreads like fire through dried brush. The most common killer is dysentery, born from the very filth that seeps into every stream. It starts with stomach cramps. Then the endless diarrhea, leaving men weak, dehydrated, unable to rise. Their tents reek, their bodies waste away, their eyes sink deep into their skulls. Companions curse them for fouling the air, yet fear touching them, fear even standing near. Most die quietly, curled in their blankets, slipping into sleep and never waking. Others linger, moaning, until their bodies are little more than skin stretched tight over bone. The ground outside the camps fills with shallow graves, each marked by a rough board or a pile of stones. Sometimes not even that. Worse still is cholera. It arrives without warning, striking whole camps at once. A man healthy in the morning may be dead by evening. His body racked by vomiting and diarrhea so violent that he shrivels into a husk within hours. His companions watch in horror, helpless, terrified to touch him. By the time courage comes, it is too late. Cholera leaves trails of corpses. Camps half empty, tools abandoned, fires cold. Survivors flee, but the disease follows, carried in water, in filth, in fear. Men whisper of curses, of demons in the river, of God punishing their greed. But still they drink, still they dig, still they die. Some deaths are slower, quieter. Scurvy creeps in where fresh food is absent. Gums swell, teeth loosen and fall. Skin bruises at the slightest touch, wounds refuse to heal. A miner may waste away for months, his body crying out for fruit, for vegetables, for anything beyond beans and bacon. The lucky ones find onions, potatoes, a sack of dried apples at ruinous price. The unlucky rot slowly, their bodies collapsing from within. The rivers, too, breed more than gold. They breed mosquitoes, clouds of them rising at dusk, whining through the camp. Each bite a roll of dice, each itch a chance of fever. Malaria strikes with chills, sweats, weakness. Men shiver beneath blankets even in the heat of summer, their bodies burning and freezing by turns. Quinine is rare, precious, hoarded like gold. Most endure, some recover, many do not. Fevers of all kinds sweep the camps: typhoid, influenza, nameless plagues carried by ships and wagons. Each leaves bodies in its wake, each deepens the graveyard. Step beyond the tents, into the hills. You will find the graveyard. Shallow mounds of earth, rough crosses hammered from pine. Some graves bear names, carved hastily with knives. Others are anonymous, marked only by stones. Dogs dig at the edges, rains wash the soil away, bones gleam pale beneath the sun. Funerals are brief, if they happen at all. A prayer muttered, a body lowered, a mound filled. Companions return quickly to the river, for the gold will not wait. And often the dead outnumber the mourners. Many die alone. A prospector, sick with fever, crawls into his tent and never rises. Days later, neighbors notice the silence, the stench. They find him stiff, his pouch of gold clutched in his hand, his eyes staring blankly. Others vanish into the wilderness, seeking health or solitude, and are never seen again. Only years later are their bones discovered by hunters, scattered among rocks, sun bleached and forgotten. The constant presence of death weighs on the mind. Imagine lying awake at night, listening to the coughs around you, wondering which will fall silent by morning. Imagine working beside a man one day, and seeing his grave the next. Imagine eating your beans while flies swarm on the corpse of a mule not 10 yards away. The camps live with death, breathe it, carry it. And yet, the fever for gold presses men onward. They dig while coughing blood, pan while shaking with fever, stumble to the river even as their bodies crumble. For to stop is to admit defeat, and defeat is worse than death. And through it all, the land remains beautiful. The rivers sparkle, the pines whisper, the mountains shine with snow. Nature does not care for the graves at its feet, the sickness in the camps, the bodies burned in hurried pyres. The gold lies hidden still, waiting, as if mocking the men who died to find it. Stand now in the graveyard at dusk. The air is cool, the cross is dark against the fading sky. The camp hums faintly in the distance, the coughs and cries drifting on the wind. This is the true cost of the gold rush. Not only hunger, not only exhaustion, not only crime, but disease. Invisible, relentless, merciless. And yet tomorrow, the camp will rise again. Tomorrow, men will drink from the same rivers, eat from the same pots, sleep in the same filthy tents. Tomorrow, death will claim more. For the gold is still there, and the fever is stronger than fear. But sickness is only one terror of the night. For when the sun sets and shadows stretch long, the camp itself transforms. Fires flare, pistols crack, laughter and screams mingle in the dark. The day belongs to labor, but the night belongs to desperation. So let us step into the camp at night, where fear, noise, and restless dreams twist around the firelight. The sun slides behind the mountains, and the river quiets. Picks are laid down, pans abandoned, shovels stuck upright in the dirt like grave markers. You would think this is when peace might fall, when weary men at last find rest. But night in the camps is no peace. It is another battlefield. As darkness creeps in, fires bloom across the valley. Sparks leap into the dusk, smoke rises in twisting columns, shadows dance on canvas and wood. Around each fire, a small world forms, men eating, drinking, gambling, plotting, dreaming. The smell thickens, beans bubbling, bacon sizzling, whiskey spilling, sweat steaming from tired bodies. Add to it the stench of horse dung, the smoke of damp wood, the rot of garbage, and the sharp tang of gunpowder. Night has its own perfume here, acrid and intoxicating. The tables come alive first. Rough planks balanced on barrels, lanterns swinging above, dice clattering across wood. Gold dust is measured in pinches, spoonfuls, thimblefuls. Cards slap down, curses fly, laughter follows. Whiskey pours fast, burning throats, loosening tongues, dulling aches. Men who are silent all day now roar with drunken bravado, swearing their strike is just ahead, their luck about to turn. Some leave richer, many poorer, all drunker. But whiskey fuels more than laughter. It fuels fights. A man cheats at cards, another notices, pistols flash, the table overturns, lanterns crash. Shouts rise, fists swing, knives gleam. By dawn, the ground will bear stains darker than whiskey. Music threads through the night. A fiddle scraping, a harmonica wheezing, a drum beaten on an overturned pan. Songs of home, songs of longing, body songs shouted off-key. Voices clash in half a dozen languages, all rising to the same ragged chorus of desperation. The camp never grows silent. Even in the darkest hours, the noise rolls on, laughter, arguments, coughing, moaning, gunshots echoing through the hills. Silence would feel unnatural, even dangerous, as if it meant something worse than noise was lurking. Into this chaos move the women of the camps, few in number, yet central to the night. Some are cooks, selling hot meals for ruinous prices. Some are laundresses, scrubbing filth from shirts and trousers in icy streams. Some are nurses, tending the sick, their hands steady even as fever rages. And some are prostitutes, slipping between tents, their laughter mingling with the music and the curses. For lonely men with pockets of dust, their presence is both solace and illusion. Desire and despair mingle in the dark, traded ounce by ounce for company that vanishes with the dawn. Not all fires burn openly. In the shadows, deals are struck, thefts planned, knives sharpened. Men whisper of claims worth stealing, of rivals worth removing. Shadows move behind tents, slitting canvas, stealing boots, rifling pouches. Sometimes the victim wakes. Sometimes he fights. Sometimes a shot splits the night, and bodies are dragged quietly into the brush. The camp may roar with music and laughter, but always in its darker corners lurk silence and death. The sick moan through the dark. Dysentery, cholera, fever, they do not rest when the sun sets. Men toss in their blankets, muttering prayers, crying out in delirium. Companions turn away, clutching their own blankets tighter, as if distance can keep death at bay. At times, a scream erupts as fever takes hold. At times, silence falls as breath stops. Death is as common at night as gambling, as ordinary as whiskey. And for those who do lie down, sleep is no refuge. In the shanties and tents, men twist on hard ground, their muscles screaming from the day's labor. Lice bite, fleas crawl, rats rustle in the dark. Blankets stink of smoke and sweat, boots serve as pillows, pistols lie within arm's reach. Dreams come in fragments, of rivers glinting with gold, of families left behind, of food never tasted here. Often the dreams sour, turning to nightmares of robbery, sickness, death. Men wake with a start, sweat chilling their backs, then sink back into uneasy slumber. The night does not refresh. It drains. Above all, there is fear. Fear of thieves, fear of sickness, fear of sudden violence. A pistol shot can rouse the whole camp in seconds, men stumbling from tents with rifles ready. Sometimes they find nothing. Sometimes they find a body cooling in the dirt. The night amplifies every sound, every shadow. A cough seems louder, a footstep more sinister, a whisper more dangerous. Men live in a state of half-sleep, always listening, always waiting. Stand now in the middle of the camp at midnight. Fires glow like scattered stars, smoke drifts in ribbons, voices rise and fall like waves. The air is thick with noise and stench, with laughter and fear, with life and death braided together. This is the camp at night, a place of gambling and music, of sickness and theft, of whiskey and violence. A place where hope flickers and fear smolders, where the fever for gold burns brightest even in darkness. And yet, beneath the noise, beneath the stench, beneath the fear, lies the greatest cruelty of all, the illusion that this suffering will lead to wealth. So let us turn, slowly, into the cruelest truth of the gold rush, the illusion of wealth, where most men find not fortune but dust. Morning comes again. The sun climbs, men rise, the river fills with labor. Picks strike, pans swirl, gravel spills. But what does it all bring? Not fortune. Not palaces. Not lives transformed overnight. Mostly it brings dust. The newspapers back east painted California as a land of instant wealth, where gold lay thick as pebbles, where a man could grow rich in days. Letters carried home by the lucky few told stories of nuggets the size of fists, of pans that glittered like treasure chests. But for every story of sudden wealth, 1,000 went untold, stories of pans that yielded nothing, of men who dug for months and left with less than they arrived. The dream was real, yes, but for almost all, it remained out of reach. Most miners never saw a nugget. What they found was dust, fine, glittering, beautiful, but meager. Collected in pinches, brushed from pans, weighed in tiny scales. Imagine squatting by the river all day, swirling gravel until your arms ache, your back screams, your skin burns. At the end of 12 hours, you collect a spoonful of dust. Enough, perhaps, for a loaf of bread, a pint of whiskey. Enough to survive, but not enough to escape. Day after day, week after week, the dust gathers slowly. And always it slips away faster than it comes, spent on food, on tools, on whiskey, on medicine, on survival. Yes, some grew rich. A handful. A lucky strike here, a rich vein there. Their stories spread like wildfire, feeding the fever, pulling more men into the rivers. But they were exceptions. And even the rich were not safe. A man who found fortune became a target. Thieves stalked him, mobs envied him, merchants overcharged him. Some drank their wealth away in months, others gambled it into dust. A fortune found in a year could vanish in a night. Wealth here was not security. It was a spotlight, painting a man bright against a background of hunger. And the cruelest truth, the real wealth of the gold rush was made not by miners, but by merchants. The man selling shovels, pans, and boots grew rich. The trader hauling beans and flour at ruinous prices grew rich. The saloon keeper, the gambler, the blacksmith, these men prospered, while the miners starved. The miners dreamed of gold, the merchants sold them the tools to chase it. And in that transaction lay the true fortune of California. Every miner believed he was one pan away. That tomorrow the dust would shine brighter, The nugget would appear, the vein would open. Hope kept them digging, kept them starving, kept them fighting. But the truth is harsh, for most, the gold never came. They spent years chasing shadows, their bodies breaking, their lives withering, their pockets empty. The illusion was stronger than reality. Strong enough to keep men laboring until their graves swallowed them. Look around the camp at dusk. See the faces in the firelight, gaunt, hollow-eyed, streaked with dirt. These are not men on the verge of fortune. These are men on the edge of collapse. Some clutch pouches with a few grains of dust, their hands trembling as if afraid the illusion might spill away. Others sit empty-handed, staring into the flames, their eyes blank. They came chasing wealth and found only hunger. And still, they do not leave. For leaving means admitting failure, means confessing that the dream was a lie. Better to dig another day. Better to believe. Stand now at the riverbank, the water cold around your ankles. Scoop, swirl, spill, search. Your arms ache, your stomach growls, your body trembles. The pan glitters, yes, but only faintly, only dust, never enough. This is the illusion of wealth. Not fortune in the hand, but hope in the heart. Not gold enough to escape, but just enough to keep you working. The camps survived not on riches, but on the promise of riches. The men survived not on gold, but on the dream of gold. And as the dream fades, as pockets stay empty and faces grow hollow, despair deepens. For the fever does not give way to fortune, it gives way to collapse. So let us walk with them now into that collapse. Into the faces drained of hope, into the pockets turned inside out, into the final breaking of the dream. Into the collapse of dreams. The fever burns bright, but no fever lasts forever. There comes a moment when even the strongest back bends too far, when even the hungriest hope shrivels. That moment is the collapse. Walk through the camp at dawn. You see them, men who do not rise when the river calls. They lie on their blankets staring at the canvas above, their eyes glassy, their faces pale. Not from sickness, not from wounds, but from despair. They have worked for months, for years, and their pans remain empty. Their pouches hold nothing but dust. Their hands are scarred, their boots worn through, their bodies wasted. And inside them, something has broken. They no longer believe. Some finally weigh their gold dust, only to realize it is less than what they spent on food and tools. They shake the pouch, listening to the faint rattle, and feel the sting of defeat. Merchants demand coin they do not have. Gamblers strip the last of their dust. Debts pile high unpaid. Men who came chasing fortune find themselves poorer than when they began. And so, they turn their pockets inside out, staring at the emptiness where gold was supposed to be. When dreams collapse, men vanish. Some slip away in the night, abandoning claims, leaving tents to sag in the wind. They trudge back east, empty-handed, hoping to rebuild lives they left behind. Others head to the cities, San Francisco, Sacramento, seeking work as laborers, dock hands, anything but miners. The camps thin. The river banks grow quiet. What was once a swarm becomes a scattering. The fever cools, leaving silence in its wake. Not all leave. Some refuse to admit the dream has died. They dig with frantic energy, their eyes wild, their bodies collapsing. They chase rumors of new strikes, pack their meager belongings, march to another river, another hill, another false hope. Many die in this madness. Lost in mountains, swallowed by deserts, starved on lonely trails. They refuse to quit until the earth itself swallows them. Others drink themselves into ruin. Whiskey becomes their gold, the saloon their mine. They gamble away their last dust, then their boots, then their shovels. Finally, they gamble their lives in fights they cannot win. And always there are the letters. Men scratch them out by firelight, their hands trembling, their eyes wet. Letters to wives, to mothers, to children. I am sorry. There is nothing here. I will return when I can. Some confess failure openly, their shame heavy on the page. Others lie, insisting they are close, that fortune is just ahead, though their words ring hollow. Many letters never arrive at all, lost on trails, stolen, or burned when the writer cannot bear to send them. For many, collapse means death far from home. Their bodies lie in shallow graves marked by nothing more than a pile of stones. Their names fade, their families never know their fate. They vanish into the wilderness, another victim of a dream too heavy to bear. And the land does not pause. The rivers keep flowing, the mountains keep rising, the gold remains hidden. Nature swallows their graves, leaving no trace of the men who gambled everything and lost. Look into the faces of those who remain. Hollow cheeks, sunken eyes, lips cracked, hands trembling. These are not the faces of fortune. They are the faces of survivors who wonder why they are still here, why they are still digging, why they cannot let go of the dream that betrayed them. Some laugh bitterly, mocking themselves. Others fall silent, lost in thought. Others rage, cursing the land, the rivers, the lies that brought them here. All carry the same weight, the collapse of dreams. Stand now in the ruins of a camp at dusk. The fires are few, the laughter gone, the music silent. The ground is littered with abandoned tools, broken pans, torn boots. The air feels empty, heavy, tired. This is the end of the gold rush for most. Not triumph, not wealth, not glory. But silence. Defeat. Broken dreams scattered across rivers and valleys. And yet, the legend lives. For the gold rush is remembered not by the hollow faces, not by the graves, not by the failures. It is remembered by the few who struck rich, by the myth of fortune, by the story told to those who were not here to see the truth. But before the legend hardens, before history is written, let us pause in this silence. Let us count the cost of one night in the goldfields, the hunger, the filth, the violence, the death. For only then can we understand the true price of the dream. So let us close with the price of one night. The camp lies quiet at last. The fires smolder low, the dice are stilled, the pans abandoned. The river murmurs in the dark, carrying with it the glitter of gold and the stench of waste. The coughs fade, the laughter dies, the guns fall silent. And in that silence, the truth of the gold rush whispers. You think of this. To survive even a single night here is no small feat. A night in the goldfields costs you hunger. Your supper is beans grown cold, bacon too salty, bread so hard it chips your teeth. It costs you comfort. Your bed is hard ground or damp straw, your blanket crawling with lice, your tent sagging under rain. It costs you health. The water you drink carries filth, the air you breathe carries fever, the smoke you inhale scratches your lungs. It costs you safety. Thieves prowl the shadows, pistols crack without warning, knives glint in the firelight. Trust is rare, betrayal common, violence constant. And it costs you sleep. You lie awake with your body aching, your mind racing, your ears straining for footsteps, gunshots, coughs that might mean the man beside you will be gone by morning. All this for one night? The goldfields are littered with broken bodies. Some lie beneath mounds of earth, marked by crude crosses. Others rot in shallow graves washed out by rain. Still others vanish into the wilderness, their bones left to bleach in silence. The living are no less broken. Backs bent, hands blistered, eyes hollow, spirits crushed. They stagger through each endless day, not with strength but with stubbornness, driven by a fever that refuses to release them. And what do they gain? Most leave with nothing. Pockets turn inside out, debts heavier than when they began. The lucky few clutch a handful of dust, barely enough to survive the road home. The very rare strike it rich, but even then, wealth proves fleeting. Whiskey, gambling, theft, and envy devour fortunes as quickly as they appear. The dream of wealth collapses, again and again, leaving behind only ruins. Every night, the echoes linger. The shout of a gambler caught cheating. The crack of a pistol in the dark. the jeers of a mob stringing up a thief, the whisper of a knife sliding free. Justice here is as harsh as crime, and both leave the ground stained. The legend of the gold rush often forgets this, painting over it with bright tales of fortune. But beneath those tales lie bodies too many to count. And above it all, the shadow of disease. Dysentery, cholera, malaria, scurvy, each one carving through the camps, leaving men pale, weak, buried in haste. A single night might bring fever, a single sip of water might bring death. The camps are not remembered for their plagues, but they should be. For disease claimed more miners than bullets or knives. So what is the true treasure of the gold rush? Not the dust in the pans, not the nuggets in the rivers, not the fortunes carried away by merchants and gamblers. The true treasure is the story, the myth, the legend of ordinary men striking rich, of rivers paved with gold, of lives transformed overnight. A story powerful enough to lure thousands across deserts, over mountains, through seas. A story strong enough to endure even when the truth was failure and death. That is the price of one night here, suffering traded for a legend that outlived those who paid it. Stand with me now, in the quiet after the camp has gone still. The firelight glows faint, the river flows on, the stars wheel above. Around you lie the remnants of 1,000 dreams, broken pans, torn boots, empty pouches, shallow graves. Do you hear it? The whispers of the men who came here, who believed, who dug, who starved, who died. Their voices still linger in the smoke, in the water, in the soil. They tell you what the legend does not, that fortune was rare, and suffering was common. That the gold rush was built not on wealth, but on hunger, violence, sickness, and broken lives. And yet, they also tell you why they came. Because hope is stronger than reason, and the dream of gold is brighter than the fear of death. And so, as the night settles over the valley, we leave the camps behind. We leave the noise, the filth, the fever. We leave the men huddled in their shelters, dreaming of gold they will never find. What remains is the truth, that the price of one night in the gold rush was hunger, fear, pain, and despair. And that price was paid by thousands, again and again, so that the legend could be born. And now, with the fires dying low, with the stars bright above, we let the voices of the past fade. Their echoes linger, but softly, gently, carrying us into silence. And so, as the night settles, may these echoes of the past guide you gently into dreams,